where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. I am Casey Watts, School Impact Strategist and the host of this show. Now, if you are here, then you inevitably are an instructional leader who wants to make change happen, even when change seems impossible. And you can do that if you have cohesive, vision-driven teams that have done clarity work. They know exactly where they're headed and how they're going to get there. These teams have done identity work and they've built their self and social awareness skills. And they have done collaboration work and they know how to move beyond faux collaboration to get to true collaboration where change happens and where people get on board. I'm so excited to bring to you conversations that help you to do exactly that. The work that needs to be done to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to, this is actually episode 71. And tonight's topic is achievement teams, a better approach to PLCs. And I am joined with none other than Steve Ventura. Steve, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, Casey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped to have you. Okay, so you did this, and I know for a fact that every time you go visit a district or campus, you take a picture with them and you have sunglasses on. I want to hear about those things.
Okay. First of all, this is Shaka. I got this from Hawaii. Okay. And because I work there a lot, the sunglasses came into play like every time we do a 3-day certification for achievement teams. All the people that come get a swag bag, and there's this set of sunglasses. They look like Ray-Bans. They look like these, but they're not. They're faux Ray-Bans. So, we make everybody put them on. They're such good sports. We take a picture with the sunglasses. And then it kind of became my trademark. Like, oh, you always have your sunglasses on. Just like you said, I'm like, oh, you want to put my sunglasses on? Okay, we can do this whole thing with my sunglasses on. So that's where that came from. Why did I know you were going to ask that?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's one of my favorite things. I love seeing the pictures because I know that people are going to have sunglasses on, and it's awesome. I think it speaks to your casual approach and very personable interaction with the people that you work with.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I hope so. We like to have a good time.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking all about achievement teams. Now, you have written a book titled Achievement Teams, right? And I know that the work that you do with schools revolves around this content. So I want you to start by sharing with us what inspired you to write Achievement Teams in the first place.
Oh, it's a great question. And I'm glad we're starting off this way. A long time ago, when I first started consulting, I was certified in a training called Data Teams. And Data Teams was a 6-step process. So I was going around the country training data teams. This is the work from the Leadership and Learning Center. It's now no longer, but this was under a mentor of mine named Dr. Douglas Reeves. So we got trained in data teams, super popular PDKC. I'm going around the country loving to do it, but what I discovered was every time I went back to follow up, no one can finish the meeting. No one ever got through it, Casey. When they got the data organized, and that's when it stopped. Mm-hmm. I'm like, there's 5 more things you have to do, and there's just not enough time. So when I started consulting on my own, I thought of achievement teams because another client said, this is our achievement team. Like, achievement teams, I like that. So I started using achievement teams, and then I cut it down to 4 steps. And what I discovered, Casey, was like, people were focusing so much on the data, they never got a chance to reflect on the antecedents that caused the data. Mm-hmm. So you talk about it all the time. What are the root causes? What preceded these results? Our premises, what, so what, now what? That's how we've added to this. And of course, it's all based on visible learning. Mm-hmm. So data teams, John Hattie wasn't out yet with all these findings. it just started to emerge around 2010. And then when I was writing achievement teams, there were 6 super factors in that book based on visible learning. So we just started working on goal setting, collaboration, formative assessment, and evaluation, and embedded those practices in that book. So the 4 steps are nothing more than just get your data organized, create a SMART goal. But the last 2 steps are analyzing the results. Jana Lee,
Yes, Jonna.
Jana. So
Yeah.
you watch her stuff. She's doing what we love. Analyze the results, and then start talking about how is this going to change your practice before the next meeting. So achievement teams is a pre-post assessment. It's a cycle, and that's where it came from. And so we focus more on the reflective piece, like what, so what, now what will you do differently now that as opposed to, well, we gave the assessment and we never had enough time to reflect on the practices. And of course, that's what visible learning is all about, reflection and mindsets. You talked about it with me. And so that's where the idea came from. Then the book just flowed like a well-oiled machine. Like, yeah, we have a data collection form. We love data, but that's only 10% of the meeting. We should be focusing on our practice. And then, my catchphrase is, what's the key point of a PLC? Appropriating new knowledge, not maintaining existing knowledge.
Yeah.
And then sensitively challenging current thinking and practice. So at the end of the meeting, you do have a chance to say, what am I going to do different between the pre and the post assessment? I hope that makes sense, but that's the premise.
Yeah. Yeah. So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
With your achievement teams, and you said there's just the 4 steps, which I think is so powerful, because think about how often we get these meaty, wonderful, wonderful books, right? Like there are these books that are chock full of fantastic content, great theories, amazing pedagogy, but it's just so much. And it can be so overwhelming for leaders or team leads to work through that. Like you said, we kind of go through a little bit of it, but then the rest goes by the wayside because it's just too heavy.
Yeah.
So with your 4 steps, is it something that an achievement team would work through within one meeting, or is it over time?
This is really a great question too. So the reason we cut it down to 4 steps is to see if teams could finish a meeting in 45 to 50 minutes, which means that we have a 80-20 rule. You should spend 20% of the time organizing data and setting a SMART goal, and 80% of the time talking about what are the implications of the data and how you're going to choose high impact instructional strategies. So we try to balance that out. And normally, if you have 45 minutes, it's about 8 minutes to organize, and then another, 38 to 40 minutes to talk about the things that are most important. But we're not opposed to people saying, well, let's get the first 2 steps done, and then we'll do the next 2 steps on another day, just as long as it's not 2 weeks later. I mean, it's got to be timely.
Yeah.
So, but we tried to make it so it was very attractive to teachers, so they could say, all right, if we use the spreadsheet you gave us, if we follow the prompts, we should be able to finish. And then, we offer this whole instructional strategy flip book for strategies. And then people should be able to finish the meeting and then implement it. I mean, it's the impact that matters the most. So yeah, you can break it up, but we try to make it in one meeting. And you know what I'm talking about. If we go over, then we miss a huge opportunity. And the opportunity is to reflect on practice and just admit, like, that practice has never worked. Why do I keep doing that over and over again? So those are some of the things we want people to focus on in that time limit. I don't think they have to be 2 hours long. Do you? I don't. No. I mean, teachers are busy.
Right.
So I think that, the more economical this is with more meaning, the more impact we have. And I always tell teachers, we want you to have autonomy too. Not every time you meet should be this.
Right.
I mean, there are other times where they don't need a process or a protocol. They just need to take a deep breath.
Agreed.
So that was kind of the premise of, maybe we can finish it in 45 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's so great. And I'm just thinking about this, the practicality of it too. When a team is beginning to implement something like this, so I know that there can be hurdles that we face when we're trying to implement anything new, right? So can you explain what some of the biggest hurdles have been? And I was just kind of thinking about what it could be in my situation if I tried to implement it. I could see us needing to bite off just a little at a time and practicing a piece of it. Like, yes,
Yeah.
we want to try to get through it, but our focus is this so that we can become really strong in this area and then add on as time goes on. But what have you seen as some hurdles that you've had to overcome?
I think for our motto is don't get it right, get it started, we'll fix it later.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do is, I'm going to tell you the hurdle is the assessment literacy piece, to be honest with you. Sometimes the assessments are not written at the correct level of rigor and complexity, so it skews the data.
Mm-hmm.
And, we see verbs like analyze and cite, which are DOK level 3, but the assessments are asking kids to find and identify. I'm like, you just deficit top by 2 levels of DOK. Yeah. So we feel like if the evidence from the assessment is valid and reliable, the rest of the meeting is completely appropriate. But that's one of the hurdles is just, how many assessment courses did you take pre-service? I didn't take an assessment course. Nobody taught me what a question stem was and what distractors were. I didn't know that. I would just find an assessment that was already written and it may have not been vetted. So that's one hurdle. But the other one is time. And, when we get in with our client districts, we usually ask people just to do this, like, please just give a pre-assessment before we come. Wait till the day before. Give your kids the assessment, bring your data. We'll walk you through the rest of the steps. Mm-hmm. So then we take it one step at a time. So that might be a 90-minute meeting with each grade level. But we want to show people how to actually conduct the meeting, and then answer their questions about the assessment results. So we give them feedback on the assessments they write. But, time and assessment literacy are probably 2. And then there's, let's be honest, we have outliers who don't want to meet.
Right.
And this is another challenge. I'm constantly hearing from other team members, like they're not cooperating. They don't like to do this. And I'm like, well, this is something that, maybe your building principal has to take care of with the people. You're not a quasi administrator. Don't get into it. You don't evaluate people. Let somebody else handle that for you. But I always say, just work around your outliers and keep the momentum going. Yeah. And pretty soon they'll feel isolated. Like, why everybody else is doing this? Why am I the only one not buying in?
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens with that. So we see resistance too. I'm sure you do in your daily work. Like, resistance to change is huge. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the resistance is based on toxic or negative feelings. I think it's based on teachers trying to figure out in their mind, when else am I going to fit this in? Like, my plate's already loaded.
Yep.
So all of that empathy has to come out when you work with teams and just acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, teachers want to know that they're busy. And we acknowledge the time, the fact that they may not be experts at assessment writing, or even a little bit of complexity like DOK, then these are places where we start. So it's chunked, Casey, just like you said. Mm-hmm. It all come together. We usually, with a new client, recommend 4 cycles a year. And we come back every single one. And by that 3rd or 4th one, they're ready for year 2. Then we have deep implementation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I just tell people, don't worry about it right now. We'll show you how to get through this. And it's still going to be beneficial. Mm-hmm. So I think teachers love it. Like, oh, so we're going to kind of take it slow. And I'm like, yeah, wouldn't that be great if we just kind of learned it?
Yeah. Yeah. So there were 2 things that I was thinking of as you were talking. And one of those is it's kind of an aha moment for me a little bit. And just thinking about my experience with teams, when we review or analyze data, we sometimes can spend so much time with such little productivity or impact. Yeah. And it's dawning on me that number one, we're looking at invalid or not credible data.
Yeah.
Which absolutely could be the case. And if that is the case, then it makes it even more challenging to analyze it appropriately, even when you do have skills for that. And then several teachers are coming without that skill set because, like you said, that's not something you intuitively know about when you begin teaching. And then the other thing that you were talking about was the feeling like it's just one more thing. But I would venture to guess that if a team was to effectively implement your processes, that it would feel less like something additionally on their plate and more like something that is life-giving and time-giving as time goes on.
That's what we hope, right? Want
Mhm.
people to see the value in collaboration, not just another thing to jump through. Like, oh, another pet project from the administration. Now this guy's come in and we got to do something called achievement teams. By the way, I always tell people, don't change the name of your meeting to achievement teams. If you're a PLC, you're a PLC. I always have to tell people, like, we named the book because that's what we thought people were going to be talking about. But I always tell people, don't change the name. So I feel like we're trying to make this so welcoming and engaging that people would say, we can't miss today's meeting. Like, this is going to be
Mhm.
the best part. And so that's usually what happens because they're measuring impact, progress, and achievement. And it's usually pretty good news if they do it right.
Yeah.
And then, there's a little bit of cause for celebration. But I feel like you do about the data piece. Like, sometimes we'll work with client schools and the teachers will give a pre-assessment on new knowledge. Like, the kids are novice learners with this, but they all score 100% on the pre-assessment. And I just ask people to consider two things. Either you taught this really well, or like somebody else taught it really well, or the assessment was too easy. You have to decide which one is it. Most people will say, you know what? I think it was too easy. I'm like, yeah, this data is not valid. Like, you
Yeah.
don't even need a post assessment, 100%
Right.
proficiency. Apparently they have it.
Yeah.
So, so that's what we always caution for. Now, we're not asking kids to just fail miserably, but we want them to take something that's challenging and rigorous so the teachers get better feedback on, well, what were the gaps? What were the strengths? How can we do a really good item analysis, or even focus on what's working, and what do we need to actually get after? And I think the data piece for me, this is how we've evolved, Casey, since we're talking about it. Like, we tell teachers now, when you bring your data, just tell us what you see. Do not say anything else. Like, everybody got number 6 wrong, or on page 3 they inverted the map. I don't explain it. Don't, just say what you see, because I've
Yeah.
discovered if we can just get what they see isolated, then
Yeah.
the next step is then to start describing why that happened. And then the third step is, what are the implications to me?
Mhm.
So, but we used to try to get people to do everything. And I decided, no, I think if you just look at the data first with no opinion, that's the big
Mhm.
thing. Like, no opinion, just what does it say? What do you see?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're ready to have a deeper discussion because they're trying to do it all at the same time. I want to fix it. I want to get this done. I'm like, no, you just tell me what you see, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. And then we start getting into the why did that happen?
Right.
Been a better process, but
That
that's what.
reminds me of sometimes what I've done with teams when we're about to analyze data is we'll put up a T chart, and on one side it says phrases to avoid, on the other side it's
Mm,
mindsets to employ.
yes.
And the example for that I typically use this example to start with, but the mindset or the phrase to avoid is the questions were too hard. And so the mindset that we try to employ instead is there are going to be challenging questions on an
That's
assessment.
perfect.
And
Yeah,
because that
I love
typically
that.
is what happens, like we have these phrases that we automatically jump to. Teachers have this identity. They want to do really well at their job. So it can be easy and sometimes just human nature to want to think about why things happen a certain way and then to spin a narrative for it. So that I feel like has been helpful
I
also.
love that, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
really like the
that's
idea of just saying, here it is at face value. What are the facts? So I'm going to add that to
it's
my top.
wonderful. I think that's a great way to rephrase it too, and get away from the stress and the anxiety, and just acknowledge that, yeah, some things will be difficult, but kids don't learn unless they're challenged.
Right.
So we can't just have them walk right over it. They've got to struggle a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's a perfect way to get people to avoid some of the more kind of non-productive stuff that you can talk about.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I love that. I think that's
Yeah.
perfect for a PLC.
So I want to hear, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear what this has looked like. Like if you had some success stories of what this has looked like with a specific school that you've worked with, as much as you could share without giving away any confidential information, of
Oh, yeah.
course, but we would love to hear some success stories.
On our website, it's just my name, steveventura.com. There's actually 3 case studies that are posted right now. One from Brooklyn, one from, oh gosh, what are the other 2? One and 2 from California. And so people can read the actual white paper of what they did with achievement teams and how they made it work. And, typically, honestly, to go back to the very beginning, the only reason it was so effective in all 3 of those places because it had amazing instructional leaders.
Mm.
It was the key. We know when it's not going to work. I can tell you right now, we
Yeah.
know when we go into like, uh-oh, this is going to be challenging. We have someone that is not quite sure how to lead this. And you just need that pivot person. So the case studies feature not only what the teachers are doing, but how the principal has led it and what made it so successful. Like, for instance, in Brooklyn, New York, I mean, we love that school. It's called Public School 249, PS 249. And that is our latest white paper case study. And I mean, they do everything in that school, learning labs for teachers. They really look at their pre-post assessment results deeply with consistency, and they're super motivated. These are teachers that it's just that magic place. All 3 case studies is magical. You know what I'm saying? Like you would go in there and like they would see like, Casey, tell us more. Like, how can we do? That's the kind of people they are. And so our biggest success is when it's properly led. And when we don't do drive-bys. I mean, we try to do a foundation day for people, and then it's just, it could turn into something. It could not materialize into anything, but it won't for sure if the building leader or the district level leaders aren't going to support the teachers with it. Now, I always tell people when they want me to come in, the leader's like, you know what this means, right? You have to get out in front and live the culture you want everyone else to live. Otherwise, forget about it.
Yep.
And I just have to get that commitment from people. I'm a former principal superintendent. I know. So I think those are some of the ways it's very successful. But you know as well as I do that if something like an initiative like PLCs is not led with consistency and integrity and ability, then who's going to want to do it? Like, if they don't see the people that are asking them to do it not there being present with them, why would they think that that's even matters? So those are some of the things that we absolutely recommend that the people we work with do. Can't change, we can't make people do it or not do it, but I think as well as I do, you have a lot of experiences. I watch you closely, I listen to you. I think I know when you talk about your particular instances when you consult, you are always referencing leadership. And I think that is the key to a really highly functional collaborative meeting is that somebody's monitoring this and is going to give you feedback.
Yeah.
And
so let me ask you, with achievement teams, who typically are the leaders or the facilitators of those meetings?
It's funny because sometimes we get to work with very talented instructional coaches. They're just like you. They will help facilitate it to get off the ground, but then at some point in time, then we have to give it to a teacher leader. Someone on the team has to be the facilitator. And when that is the part we want to get to, we usually tell our principals, don't rotate that position. Everyone else can rotate. Like you can have a timekeeper this week. You can have a focus monitor this week. The facilitator is the best person to lead a meeting, and they should facilitate every single time. So usually it's teacher led. But I've read so much research that said, well, principals shouldn't sit at that table because then the teachers won't really open up. And of course, we wrote a whole thing about relational trust. But I think the principal presence is powerful.
Yeah.
They don't facilitate it or take over the meeting. They're there watching.
Right.
And I just think that speaks volumes about the commitment of the leader to sit at a PLC and watch. And then when they come up with a problem, the principal's there to say, let me show you how to get over that. And off we go. So those are some of the things that we look for in facilitators. You can usually tell there's somebody on every team that is an expert communicator.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, they're on the verge of becoming one.
Yeah.
And so that's who we usually recommend facilitating, not administrators. Instructional coaches are fine, but even then, sometimes then all the burden is on the coach, and it shouldn't be that way. It should just be the teacher teams working together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a huge proponent of, number one, of teams understanding and learning collaboration skills from the beginning of the school year, because I think we have this assumption that people come with inherent collaborative skills when we actually don't, because we haven't learned those over time. And I'm also a huge proponent of instructional leaders, principals primarily, learning how to identify who is a great communicator among teams, not necessarily who is the most vocal or outspoken.
You got it.
You know? And I think sometimes we get it wrong because of that, because they're so vocal and outspoken and seem to assume a leadership or facilitator role.
God, that's so important to understand, because many of this happens more in secondary than elementary and middle schools. Like usually the department chair is the facilitator, and the department chair may have the most years experience, have the longest years of longevity, but we always have to sensitively say, just because you manage not to get fired the last 30 years doesn't make you an expert.
Right.
You can be an inspired and passionate teacher after 3 years of teaching or after 30 years of teaching, but the person that's best suited for this isn't based on longevity. It's based on your skill set, and you're able to actually communicate with other people. So we run into that a little bit. No offense to department chairs. I don't mean anything by that, but I'm just saying like that usually is the person who's doing this. And by the way, department chairs are awesome. Some of them are completely suited for this, but sometimes department chairs are a rite of passage. And that might not mean that the most capable person leading the meeting is actually doing that. So I agree with you. Like the principals they know who the most effective communicator is. And we did it in my district when I was a superintendent. There was a stipend for that. I mean, well, how do I honor these people for actually getting the meeting together and organizing and facilitating? We paid them. I mean, it was worth it.
Right. So, right. And also, this is why I think it's so important too to have embedded leadership programs on your campuses or within your district, because while someone may be, number one, a phenomenal communicator and may be a fantastic classroom teacher, it's another set of skills to have to work with other adults.
Yeah.
And it can be challenging.
We do achievement teams for leaders. Usually, if a district really wants to know about it, we coach all the leaders first. Like, this is what your teachers are going to see. So let's get you up front, caught up with it. So then when I come back again, you'll see it twice. But I still think you are key on that point where Michelle and I, who co-authored the book, my wife, we just noticed that in these amazing places where collaboration is actually cherished and will use it to improve practice and evaluate impact, it is not a source of stress for these people. It's something that they look forward to because it helps them attain their professional goals. And I mean, that's just it. So when we do these trainings, we just try to, again, display empathy for teachers, but help them understand that your collaboration has way more impact than if you were to try to do this in an individual silo. Take advantage of it if your district wants you to do that, and don't look at it as another thing on your plate. Look at it as a way to improve your practice. Yeah. And then you can see we're off to the races. So
yeah. And just an encouragement to instructional leaders, like your people have to have multiple mastery experiences in order to paint a new picture for what it is you're trying to implement. So let's just take PLCs, for example. If I come in with already a negative mindset or a negative experience around PLCs, then that's what my brain has solidified.
Yeah.
as what PLCs look like and are. So now we have to create these new neurological pathways
Mm.
so that there's a new understanding and a new identity for PLCs, which takes time
Yeah.
and lots of intentional effort.
You know what the greatest feedback, and you've probably had it as well. I like when at the end of the session, teachers come up to me and say, you know what? I wasn't really looking forward to this, but you changed my mind. Like,
Yes.
this is not what I expected today. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's it. And then I know, like, oh, we connected. We found somebody
Yeah.
that sees the value. It's just about our delivery and the way we present ourselves, not to sell the soup of the day, but to help people understand that collaboration is really good. It has a point four. I'm always got Hattie on me. It's got a 0.42 effect size. It works really well in educational settings. We have researched deeply what has the highest probability of making a difference, and collective efficacy and collective intelligence all are at the top of the scale. So
Yeah.
I think if we make a compelling case, I think, Casey, again, I think the way we pay professional respect to teachers is to tell them why before how.
Mm-hmm.
Why is a professional way to treat somebody? This is why you would do this. Make a compelling case and then show people how, but just don't say, guess what you're doing now. And once people see, like, oh, this is a good reason why we should do this, then people are more willing to implement that change.
Mm.
Again, with your rich experience, you probably would agree with me, like, a change initiative that's partially implemented is no better than doing it at all. And we always tell people you can't have moderate or inconsistent implementation with your PLCs. We either all do it or you wait for another time to start it, because
Right.
we just can't have that gap.
Yeah.
And so we always encourage that with achievement teams too. But most of the time I feel like 80 to 90% is, like, to me, then we're going to make change.
Mm-hmm.
Less than that, I'm like, you guys got to fix your culture.
Yep.
Don't think it's going to happen yet,
Right.
So,
And don't think because we're implementing something like PLCs or achievement teams that it's going to shift your culture.
yeah.
It can impact it, but it's not a magic wand.
No. In your state of Texas, what we love about working with Texas is, like, instructional coaches, for the most part, what we see are an extremely important part of just about every district we've ever went to. They're revered. In California, sometimes they get the title instructional coach. They may never, ever do an impact cycle. They'll be a super sub. They'll be on yard duty. They'll do everything. They're not ever really doing, like, coaching. And this is where I feel like in Texas, sometimes PLCs are so successful, but and Texas is a big solution tree state too. So,
Right.
I mean, with instructional coaches that are trained in PLCs, and their focus as an instructional coach never really gets distracted with other things. They're there for a reason. We see that adding so much value to achievement teams, because that is just a state. Your state has prioritized instructional coaching. I don't know if you agree with me, but
Yeah.
everywhere I've seen, excuse me, instructional coaches love their job.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them are so delighted to be able to do it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really a coveted position in
yeah,
Texas. And it has become, this, I feel like the larger districts, it's pretty prevalent for them to have instructional coaches at every campus. In your more rural districts, you won't notice it as much, but it's becoming more prevalent. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
We
And
love it.
yeah. And I would say too that for the most part, their positions are protected. Like those
Mhm.
that I know within my circle in Texas, for the most part, their roles are protected.
Yeah, I agree with you. Lately, I've just been working in Region 4, Region 13, Region 10, and it's the same thing every time I go. It's like you said, a coveted position. And I think
Mhm.
that's why coaches, for the most part, are really happy, because they're so into, like, creating that craft
Yeah.
and getting better at it. And they're completely into helping PLCs and coaching teachers. So it's a huge part of achievement teams. We love to see more of it, but
Yeah.
it's kind of regional. Like, either you're a really revered coach or you got that title because, we kind of need a quasi administrator, which is a horrible thing to do
Yep.
with somebody, because they're not
Mhm.
doing that kind of work. But anyway.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to come to a close here in a little bit, but I would love to know in the future, how do you envision the continued evolution and I guess the impact of achievement teams in schools and districts? Like, are there any exciting developments? You talked a little bit about achievement teams for instructional leaders.
Yeah, that's what we're working on right now. The book so far is titled "Leading the Collective," maximizing teacher teams, and this upcoming book has so many. It's not when I say leader, Casey, I'm talking about a teacher leader, an instructional coach, or principal. So it's not just an administrative leadership person. It's somebody like in you and your district where you make leadership decisions. But we have put together like 6 profiles for this really kind of next level achievement team, which is the first one is like a really well-defined structure for collaboration, like super well-defined. So no one is unclear about what they're doing. And then we follow protocols consistently. That's number 2. Protocols for us is 4 steps, just 4 steps. Number 3, we look at a brush up on assessment literacy, including scoring guides, rubrics, feedback. Our 4th one is actually using the data to make explicit decisions about teaching, not just grading or scoring. And we always say that if you grade a formative assessment, it's academic malpractice. That data is for your feedback on your practice, and that's what formative means. Summative, okay, put it in the grade book. Our 5th one is the relational trust piece I talked about. And then the 6th profile is the leadership support. How do leaders support teams? So I'll just say it again, well-defined structure, protocols are followed consistently. The formative assessment piece is huge. I mentioned to you before, we're concerned about it. And then the results should be, any decision a team makes should be based on some sort of quantifiable evidence that is not just very subjective. Objective. It's very subjective. And then we look at the relational trust. That's a huge thing for us now. We're getting more into that, like the social emotional piece of a PLC.
Yes.
So that kind of put that in there. And then we are writing about how leaders can support this without micromanaging it, because they shouldn't have to.
Right.
And those are some of the things that are on the horizon. So we're excited. I'm just thinking like it's you don't have to have the first book to have the second book, you know. They work well together, but you wouldn't need both of them. So
yeah,
I got a golden retriever coming in here.
Hey, I noticed that intruder in the background, and I was wondering if it might make an appearance. Does the intruder have a name?
Her name is Ruby.
Ruby.
Turned a year old.
She's just, is she a lab?
She's a golden retriever.
Golden retriever. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's right down here.
I guess she's not going to make an appearance full screen.
Well, if you see her scramble out of the room, you might see her, but she's here.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to close by just noting one thing that I really loved that you said about this second book is that it is not, when you're talking about leader, you're talking about teacher leader, instructional coach. Like, I firmly believe everyone leads someone. Everyone leads someone. And there is such a thing as being, as John Maxwell says, a 360-degree leader. And so I imagine that book is going to be extremely impactful for leaders of all kinds.
We think so. We're thinking next level. We got our first one done and it was very well received, but now it's like, oh, now all the stuff we left out, you're going to see this, by the way, all the stuff we left out, you're going to go, we needed to go deeper with that. And so the motivation is there to kind of even be more exploratory about this process. But don't you agree? Like, the PLC has so much potential, and sometimes it comes with a negative connotation. And I'm just thinking, I never had this when I was a teacher. I would have died to have a principal lead this, where we talked and we actually had this opportunity to learn from each other. And so we're just loving continuing the work. And I think that the work you do is very parallel to what we're doing. And so, you know, it just seems like it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great post-pandemic thing to really get after too. if we want to like catch our kids up. And this would be a really good way to start targeting. So
absolutely. Okay. Where can our audience find you?
Just steveventura.com. I mentioned the case study. So if you go to our website, steveventura.com, you'll see a link that says resources, and you click on that, it'll be a drop down, and you'll see like, oh, here's the case studies for achievement teams, or here are some free resources you can download. And that's where we're at. So the book is at ascd.com. And but the book is not necessary to buy. If you go to the website, you'll see all the resources are there. So, although I'm not saying don't buy the book. Right. It's not for me. Look at Casey. It's for Michelle. She really needs the money. I'm okay. So,
all right. Well, in that case, everybody go buy the book. Don't just go to the website.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Well, I would love for you to share with our audience one thing you hope they'll take away. If you are here with us and can put in the comments, write what your takeaway is. And guys, know that after Steve shares what he hopes we take away from this conversation, you can catch this episode again on replay on LinkedIn, YouTube. It's on Spotify and all of the podcast platforms. And you'll see his website in the show notes as well. So, Steve, what do you hope our audience takes away?
We think the 3 indicators of successful collaboration are focus, clarity, and accountability. And I think that we need to find our focus for the meeting, not everything. We have to go from a floodlight to a flashlight. The clarity piece is being explicit with each other, not implicit, either from teacher to teacher, leader to teacher, and so forth. And the accountability has nothing to do with test scores. It's the accountability we have towards each other. I owe you my best effort in this next cycle, and I would expect the same from you. So we just think that if you have those 3, I call them accelerators of successful collaboration, focus, clarity, and accountability.
Wow. So. Gives me chills. I love it so much. I mean, you just painted a dream world.
I know, huh? Well, anyway.
Now we got to go make it happen.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for joining tonight. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for everything. Really delighted to be here. Stay in touch. Let me know if you need anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, audience. We'll check you later.
Okay.
Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.